Language education is the teaching and learning of a foreign or second language. Language education is a branch of applied linguistics. Need for language education. Increasing globalization has created a large need for people in the workforce who can communicate in multiple languages. The uses of common languages are in areas such as trade, tourism, international relations, technology, media, and science. Many countries such as Korea, Japan and China frame education policies to teach at least one foreign language at the primary and secondary school levels. However, some countries such as India, Singapore, Malaysia, Pakistan, and the Philippines use a second official language in their governments. According to Gao, China has recently been putting enormous importance on foreign language learning, especially the English language. History of foreign language education. Ancient to medieval period. Although the need to learn foreign languages is older than human history itself, the origins of modern language education are in the study and teaching of Latin in the 17th century. Latin had for many centuries been the dominant language of education, commerce, religion, and government in much of the Western world, but it was displaced by French, Italian, and English by the end of the 16th century. John Amos Comenius was one of many people who tried to reverse this trend. He composed a complete course for learning Latin, covering the entire school curriculum, culminating in his opera Didactica Omnia, 1657. In this work, Comenius also outlined his theory of language acquisition. He is one of the first theorists to write systematically about how languages are learned and about pedagogical methodology for language acquisition. He held that language acquisition must be allied with sensation and experience. Teaching must be oral. The schoolroom should have models of things, and failing that, pictures of them. As a result, he also published the world's first illustrated children's book, Orbis Sensualium Pictus. The study of Latin diminished from the study of a living language to be used in the real world to a subject in the school curriculum. Such decline brought about a new justification for its study. It was then claimed that its study developed intellectual abilities, and the study of Latin grammar became an end in and of itself. Grammar schools, from the 16th to 18th centuries, focused on teaching the grammatical aspects of classical Latin. Advanced students continued grammar study with the addition of rhetoric. 18th century. The study of modern languages did not become part of the curriculum of European schools until the 18th century. Based on the purely academic study of Latin, students of modern languages did much of the same exercises, studying grammatical rules and translating abstract sentences. Oral work was minimal, and students were instead required to memorize grammatical rules and apply these to decode written texts in the target language. This tradition-inspired method became known as the grammar translation method. 19th–20th century innovation in foreign language teaching began in the 19th century and became very rapid in the 20th century. It led to a number of different and sometimes conflicting methods, each trying to be a major improvement over the previous or contemporary methods. The earliest applied linguists included John Manescar, Heinrich Gottfried Ollendorff, Henry Sweet, Otto Jespersen, and Harold Palmer. They worked on setting language teaching principles and approaches based on linguistic and psychological theories, but they left many of the specific practical details for others to devise. Those looking at the history of foreign language education in the 20th century and the methods of teaching might be tempted to think that it is a history of failure. Very few students in U.S. universities who have a foreign language as a major manage to reach something called minimum professional proficiency. Even the reading knowledge required for a PhD degree is comparable only to what second-year language students read, and only very few researchers who are native English speakers can read and assess information written in languages other than English. Even a number of famous linguists are monolingual. However, anecdotal evidence for successful second or foreign language learning is easy to find, leading to a discrepancy between these cases and the failure of most language programs, which helps make the research of second language acquisition emotionally charged. Older methods and approaches such as the grammar translation method or the direct method are dismissed and even ridiculed as newer methods and approaches are invented and promoted as the only and complete solution to the problem of the high failure rates of foreign language students. Most books on language teaching list the various methods that have been used in the past, often ending with the author's new method. These new methods are usually presented as coming only from the author's mind, as the authors generally give no credence to what was done before and do not explain how it relates to the new method. However, there is significant evidence to the contrary. It is also often inferred or even stated that older methods were completely ineffective or have died out completely when even the oldest methods are still used. One reason for this situation is that proponents of new methods have been so sure that their ideas are so new and so correct that they could not conceive that the older ones have enough validity to cause controversy. This was in turn caused by emphasis on new scientific advances, which has tended to blind researchers to precedents in older work. There have been two major branches in the field of language learning, the empirical and theoretical, and these have almost completely separate histories, with each gaining ground over the other at one point in time or another. Examples of researchers on the empiricist side are Jespersen, Palmer, and Leonard Bloomfield, who promote mimicry and memorization with pattern drills. These methods follow from the basic empiricist position that language acquisition basically results from habits formed by conditioning and drilling. In its most extreme form, language learning is seen as basically the same as any other learning in any other species, human language being essentially the same as communication behaviors seen in other species. On the theoretical side of, for example, François Gouin, M.D., Berlitz, and Alain de Saussure, whose rationalist theories of language acquisition dovetail with linguistic work done by Noam Chomsky and others. These have led to a wider variety of teaching methods ranging from the grammar translation method to Gouin's series method to the direct methods of Berlitz and de Saussure. With these methods, students generate original and meaningful sentences to gain a functional knowledge of the rules of grammar. This follows from the rationalist position that man is born to think and that language use is a uniquely human trait impossible in other species. Given that human languages share many common traits, the idea is that humans share a universal grammar which is built into our brain structure. This allows us to create sentences that we have never heard before but that can still be immediately understood by anyone who understands the specific language being spoken. The rivalry of the two camps is intense, with little communication or cooperation between them. Teaching foreign language in classrooms. Language education may take place as a general school subject or in a specialized language school. There are many methods of teaching languages. Some have fallen into relative obscurity and others are widely used. Still others have a small following, but offer useful insights. While sometimes confused, the terms approach, method, and technique are hierarchical concepts. An approach is a set of assumptions about the nature of language and language learning, but does not involve procedure or provide any details about how such assumptions should be implemented into the classroom setting. Such can be related to second language acquisition theory. There are three principal approaches. The structural view treats language as a system of structurally related elements to code meaning. The functional view sees language as a vehicle to express or accomplish a certain function, such as requesting something. The interactive view sees language as a vehicle for the creation and maintenance of social relations, focusing on patterns of moves, acts, negotiation and interaction found in conversational exchanges. This approach has been fairly dominant since the 1980s. A method is a plan for presenting the language material to be learned, and should be based upon a selected approach. In order for an approach to be translated into a method, an instructional system must be designed considering the objectives of the teaching, learning, how the content is to be selected and organized, the types of tasks to be performed, the roles of students, and the roles of teachers. Examples of structural methods are grammar translation and the audiolingual method. Examples of functional methods include the oral approach, situational language teaching. Examples of interactive methods include the direct method, the series method, communicative language teaching, language immersion, the silent way, Suggestopedia, the natural approach, total physical response, teaching proficiency through reading and storytelling, and dogme language teaching. A technique is a very specific, concrete stratagem or trick designed to accomplish an immediate objective, such as derived from the controlling method, and less directly, from the approach. Online and self-study courses. Hundreds of languages are available for self-study, from scores of publishers, for a range of costs, using a variety of methods. The course itself acts as a teacher and has to choose a methodology, just as classroom teachers do. Audio recordings and books. Audio recordings use native speakers, and one strength is helping learners improve their accent. Some recordings have pauses for the learner to speak. Others are continuous, so the learner speaks along with the recorded voice, similar to learning a song. Most audio recordings teach words in the target language by using explanations in the learner's own language. An alternative is to use sound effects to show meaning of words in the target language. The only language in such recordings is the target language, and they are comprehensible regardless of the learner's native language. Language books have been published for centuries, teaching vocabulary and grammar. The simplest books are phrase books to give useful short phrases for travelers, cooks, receptionists, or others who need specific vocabulary. More complete books include more vocabulary, grammar, exercises, translation, and writing practice. Also, various other language learning tools have been entering the market in recent years. There are as simple examples as vocabulary stickers, but also technologically complex augmented reality translation apps. Internet and software. Software can interact with learners in ways that books and audio cannot. Some software records the learner, analyzes the pronunciation, and gives feedback. Software can present additional exercises in areas where a particular learner has difficulty, until the concepts are mastered. Software can pronounce words in the target language and show their meaning by using pictures instead of oral explanations. The only language in such software is the target language. It is comprehensible regardless of the learner's native language. Websites provide various services geared toward language education. Some sites are designed specifically for learning languages. Some software runs on the web itself, with the advantage of avoiding downloads, and the disadvantage of requiring an internet connection. Some publishers use the web to distribute audio, texts and software, for use offline. Some websites offer learning activities such as quizzes or puzzles to practice language concepts. Language exchange sites connect users with complementary language skills, such as a native Spanish speaker who wants to learn English with a native English speaker who wants to learn Spanish. Language exchange websites essentially treat knowledge of a language as a commodity, and provide a market-like environment for the commodity to be exchanged. Users typically contact each other via chat, VoIP, or email. Language exchanges have also been viewed as a helpful tool to aid language learning at language schools. Language exchanges tend to benefit oral proficiency, fluency, colloquial vocabulary acquisition, and vernacular usage, rather than formal grammar or writing skills. Many other websites are helpful for learning languages, even though they are designed, maintained and marketed for other purposes. All countries have websites in their own languages, which learners elsewhere can use as primary material for study. News, fiction, videos, songs, etc. In a study conducted by the Center for Applied Linguistics, it was noted that the use of technology and media has begun to play a heavy role in facilitating language learning in the classroom. With the help of the Internet, students are readily exposed to foreign media, and as a result, teachers are taking heed of the Internet's influence and are searching for ways to combine this exposure into their classroom teaching. Translation sites let learners find the meaning of foreign text or create foreign translations of text from their native language. Speech synthesis or text-to-speech sites and software let learners hear pronunciation of arbitrary written text, with pronunciation similar to a native speaker. Course development and learning management systems such as Moodle are used by teachers, including language teachers. Web conferencing tools can bring remote learners together, e.g., Illuminate Live. Players of computer games can practice a target language when interacting in massively multiplayer online games and virtual worlds. In 2005, the virtual world Second Life started to be used for foreign language tuition, sometimes with entire businesses being developed. In addition, Spain's Language and Cultural Institute Instituto Cervantes has an island on Second Life. Some internet content is free, often from government and non-profit sites such as BBC Online, Book2, Foreign Service Institute, with no or minimal ads. Some is ad-supported, such as newspapers and YouTube. Some requires a payment. Learning strategies. Language learning strategies have attracted increasing focus as a way of understanding the process of language acquisition. Listening as a way of learning. Clearly, listening is used to learn, but not all language learners employ it consciously. Listening to understand is one level of listening, but focused listening is not something that most learners employ as a strategy. Learning vocabulary translation and rote memorization have been the two strategies that have been employed traditionally. There are other strategies that also can be used, such as guessing, based on looking for contextual clues, spaced repetition with the use of various apps, games and tools. Knowledge about how the brain works can be utilized in creating strategies for how to remember words. Code switching, that is, changing between languages at some point in a sentence or utterance, is a commonly used communication strategy among language learners and bilinguals. While traditional methods of formal instruction often discourage code switching, students, especially those placed in a language immersion situation, often use it, if viewed as a learning strategy, wherein the student uses the target language as much as possible but reverts to their native language for any element of an utterance that they're unable to produce in the target language. Then it has the advantage is that it encourages fluency development and motivation and a sense of accomplishment by enabling the student to discuss topics of interest to him or her early in the learning process before requisite vocabulary has been memorized. It is particularly effective for students whose native language is English, due to the high probability of a simple English word or short phrase being understood by the conversational partner.